Do not trust gifts from strangers. It's a quote that you've probably heard in a movie or read in a book. The most famous example of this is the Trojan horse. But right now there's an issue that's going on that is directly related to that, and it is identity theft or cybersecurity breaches. What it is essentially is that someone or a hacker uses your data to essentially rob you of your money, your important information, and that leads to millions of Americans exploited and lost with no money. It's incredibly vital that we know this because it can nearly affect anybody. As long as you don't know what you're fully doing on the internet, you can easily become a victim of this. And what I want is that local governments or local communities, at the very least, raise education and raise awareness on this in order to prevent people from falling for these traps. And so for the rest of this speech, I'll go over the problems that it's caused and what's going on right now, as to how this is continuing, and to how we can prevent this from happening to ourselves and how we can relieve this issue. And so right now I'm going to go over how problematic this is, essentially. As of right now, according to an article from the Journal of Pension Benefits, it estimated that in 2017, 16.7 million Americans were victims of this. And that really puts in perspective how big of an issue this is. And what's even worse is that it was also estimated that $16.8 billion were lost in this. And this is still going on, especially right now in this pandemic. For example, according to the Credit Union Times in May 2020, it said that there was a Nigerian crime ring that's actually exploiting unemployment insurance companies and robbing millions of dollars that should have been going to our pockets, but instead it's going to those hackers. And that goes to show how incredibly prevalent and how it's continuing to go on at such a rate. It's incredibly important that we know as to why this is occurring. And so, according to the Education of Information Technology in January of 2019, it said that people that are over 55 are the ones most at stake or risk of becoming victims of this simply because they do not know enough about the internet or anything about cybersecurity. Another statistic was that a third did not know about spy cameras in our computers. That's just another example of how usually the people responding to the survey were just simply not aware of how easily their computer can be bugged or hacked or breached. And so that's essentially the biggest problem, is that people just simply do not know enough about cybersecurity and identity theft. To put in more perspective, according to the Targeted News Service in 2018, it's essentially can be blamed down to bad internet habits. For example, according to this survey that they took, only half of the people that responded used the same password for multiple accounts on the internet. Essentially, if one hacker figured out a password to one of their accounts, they have a good chance of figuring the same breaching for their other accounts, even bank accounts. Essentially, it can either be through social media or as serious as a bank account. And that's a very easy example as to how many Americans just have bad internet habits. Another example of this in the same article was that a third did not know that fraud alert actually didn't prevent them from being victims. Fraud alerts are simply an alert. They don't help you. Another example is that a half of these people that were surveyed had no idea that ID theft monitoring services didn't actually prevent that either. And so many of these Americans just simply do not know enough about the internet or enough about the services that they've received, and that leads to an easy pickings for the hackers. And so it can just be boiled down to bad internet habits. And as to how we can prevent this, you can easily see it's just knocking these habits out of the park. And so, for example, according to the Library Technology Reports of 2018, one great way to prevent ourselves from becoming a victim of this is to avoid suspicious links or messages that contain incorrect grammar. As mentioned, the group that were exploiting the unemployment insurance companies were from Nigeria. So many of these hackers are from exotic countries, and they don't necessarily understand or know enough about English. And so avoiding rough messages like that is a great way to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of this. Another example from the American Journal of Family Leave in 2018 said that changing passwords every 30 to 180 days is a very good habit in order to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of that. So changing passwords constantly will give you a huge boost into protecting yourself from these attacks. And it also suggests that you use two-factor authentication. And so what that is when you log into an account, there's a second step of security that you must fill in as well, not just your email and password. For example, maybe a security question like, what was the name of your first pet, or just checking that you have the same IP address, etc. Sort of like that. And the last solution that I have right here, according to the International Financial Law Review in 2019 of August, it said that suggesting that we actually start cybersecurity insurance. So sort of how we have life insurance, home insurance, car insurance, we could add a cybersecurity insurance to prevent or to necessarily have a safety net when you do become a victim of this. And so that's actually a pretty decent idea. At the very least, if you do become a victim of it, you can help yourself getting back to where you were. And so those are some great solutions to a problem that is still ongoing. And so, just like I've said in the beginning, do not trust gifts from strangers, because it can really dig you in a very dangerous spot, and it can put you in the victim of an ongoing issue that we need to solve as soon as possible. Thank you very much.